Imagine a world where the clock of civilization simply stopped. No Renaissance, no Enlightenment, and no Industrial Revolution. Just a silent, empty continent reclaimed by the forests and the shadows of a lost era. In 1347, the Black Death claimed one-third of Europe, but what if the Yersinia pestis bacteria had been more aggressive? What if the mortality rate didn't stop at 30%, but hit 95%? This is not just a story of death, it is a story of a total reboot for the human race. Today, we journey into an alternate timeline where Europe becomes a ghost continent. To understand the end, we must look at the beginning. The year is 1348. The ships from the Black Sea have docked in Messina, but this time the rats carry a hyper-virulent strain. Within weeks, the standard symptoms of buboes and fever are replaced by a rapid, necrotic collapse of the lungs. In this timeline, the plague is airborne, lethal, and virtually unstoppable for anyone. In our history, some had natural immunity. In this version, a genetic mutation in the bacteria bypasses the human immune response entirely. The mortality rate climbs. The social fabric begins to tear apart. By the second year, the transition from crisis to catastrophe is complete. Kings and peasants alike are tossed into mass pits. The divine right of kings vanishes when the crown rolls across a floor. There are no priests to give last rites, no soldiers to guard the borders, and no farmers to till the earth. The very concept of a nation dissolves as the population density plummets. Europe becomes a land of silent cities. Paris, London, and Rome are transformed into necropolises. The wind howls through empty cathedrals, and the bells of Notre Dame remain frozen in a deathly silence. As 95% of the population vanishes, nature begins its aggressive reclamation. Within a decade, the paved Roman roads that once connected the continent are cracked and overrun by roots and thick, thorny briars. Without human interference, the wolves return to the heart of Germany in numbers not seen for millennia. They roam the halls of abandoned manors, hunting the few terrified survivors who hide in the rafters. The carbon footprint of humanity vanishes. The air becomes impossibly clear. The climate begins to shift as billions of trees grow over former farmlands, sucking CO2 from the atmosphere in a rapid cooling. Consider the scale. Out of 80 million Europeans, only 4 million remain. This isn't a society anymore. It's a collection of scattered tribes. The centers of global power are about to shift violently. While Europe dies, the rest of the world watches with a mixture of horror and opportunity. The Silk Road, once a bridge for trade, has become a wall of infection that no one dares cross. But what happens to the knowledge? The libraries of Oxford and the Vatican sit unguarded. Centuries of philosophy, science, and law are left to rot in the damp European air, forgotten by time. We often think of history as an inevitable march forward, but history is fragile. It is carried in the minds of the living. When those minds perish, the future as we know it simply vanishes. In this vacuum, the Middle East and the Islamic Golden Age do not face competition from a rising West. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad becomes the undisputed intellectual center of the entire planet. Without the Crusades or European expansion, the Islamic caliphates expand their influence deep into Africa and Southeast Asia, creating a unified global trade network that bypasses the dark, cursed continent of Europe. While Europe is a graveyard, the Indian Ocean becomes the world's main artery. Merchants from the Ming Dynasty and the Delhi Sultanate trade spices, gold, and knowledge in a new, stable global economy. The Americas remain untouched by European steel and smallpox. The Aztec and Inca empires continue to evolve, building massive stone cities and complex astronomical calendars without the threat of a Spanish conquest. This is a world where the New World is never discovered by the West. Instead, perhaps, Mayan explorers eventually sail east, finding a mysterious, forested continent filled with the ruins of stone cathedrals. Imagine the shock of a traveler from a flourishing civilization stumbling upon the ruins of London. They would find a world of ghosts, where the survivors have regressed to a primitive, hunter-gatherer existence. These new Europeans live in the husks of old cathedrals, treating the remaining suits of plate armor as religious idols. They have forgotten how to read, how to forge steel, or how to sail. The technology of 1300 becomes magic to the people of 1500. They tell stories of the Great Cleansing, a time when the gods struck down the giants who built the stone towers that still stand. If you're finding this alternate history fascinating, make sure to subscribe. We dive deep into the what-ifs that could have changed our world forever. Join our community of digital historians today. Now, let's look at the genetics. In a world where 95% of a population is wiped out, the genetic bottleneck is extreme. The survivors are those with a very specific rare mutation in their CCR5 gene. This small group of survivors becomes the seed for a new European race. They are physically robust, highly resistant to disease, but isolated. Evolution takes a different path in the dark forests of the West. The lack of human noise allows for a massive surge in biodiversity. Species that were nearly hunted to extinction in our timeline, like the European bison and the lynx, reclaim the entire continent. The Black Death 2.0 was a tragedy of unimaginable proportions, but in this timeline, it served as a brutal teacher. It taught humanity that we are not separate from the biological world. It forced a global cooperation that our own timeline has often struggled to achieve. The fear of a return of the cursed wind from the west kept the other empires in a state of permanent alliance. But as the centuries pass, the land of shadows begins to call to the rest of the world. Europe is no longer just a graveyard. It is a land of myth, beauty, and untouched resources. They walk through the arches where gladiators once fought, wondering about the people who built such things. They see the beauty in the decay, the epic realism of a world that once was. They realize that the history of humanity is not a straight line, but a series of circles. Civilizations rise. They reach for the stars. And sometimes they are brought low by the smallest of creatures. The Black Death 2.0 didn't just wipe out Europe. It shifted the center of gravity for the entire human species. It created a world that is quieter, greener, and perhaps more humble. We often wonder if we are the masters of our destiny. But we are guests on a planet that has seen many masters come and go. The plague is a reminder of our own fragile place. If 95% of Europe had died, the world we see today would be unrecognizable. No New York, no industrial revolution as we know it, and perhaps a much more peaceful relationship with our environment. Every time you look at a map, remember the invisible lines drawn by biology. Our history is written in blood, but it is also written in the resilience of those who survived the darkness. The great silence of Europe is a haunting thought. A continent of ghosts, where the only sound is the wind in the trees and the slow rhythmic pulse of a world that has finally found peace.